If we can't make the deal that we want to make, or we have to make, or that's good for both parties, it's got to be good for both parties. And then we go back to where we were. We're talking about a lot of different things. Consumer prices have actually dropped. There's very little inflation. Everybody predicted a lot of inflation, very little inflation. Energy costs are down. Interest rates are probably down. They scatter, but they're probably down. Prescription drug prices are even to down. We're doing very well. It's been amazing. We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. So we're very, very happy with the way the country's running. We're trying to get the world to treat us fairly. This is something that should have been done 25 years ago, and it wasn't. Should have been done 40 years ago, and it wasn't. But no president was willing to take it on. But you had to. It's not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. And as you know, without a lot of money being added, which is a lot of money that we could add, the country is making approximately $2 billion a day. And when you think of it, we've never done that before. Never come close to it. And the number is probably $3.5 billion a day. And that makes us a very strong country. But we have Scott here and Howard and some of the people that are working on deals. And the biggest problem they have is they don't have enough time in the day. Everybody wants to come and make a deal. And we're working with a lot of different countries. And it's all going to work out very well. I think it's going to work out really very well. But we're in good shape. There's no inflation. There's very little inflation. And I went 4 years without inflation, and I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China and others, taxes in China. But we took in hundreds of billions of dollars a year from China, and we had no inflation, essentially. So we think we're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing. We're doing again what we should have done many years ago. We let it get out of control, and we allowed some countries to get very big and very rich at our expense, and can't let that happen. It's not a sustainable formula.
And next steps for China, sir?
Well, we'll see what happens with China. We would love to be able to work a deal. They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond nobody. How people stood for it, sitting in my position, is not even believable. And we're talking about many presidents, not just a couple. But they did, and all we're doing is putting it back in shape. We're resetting the table. And I'm sure that we'll be able to get along very well. I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
Mr. President, China retaliated today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction to them now targeting cultural exports from the United States?
I think I've heard of worse things. Yes, please.
How close are you to the first country coming to actually make a deal with the United States over tariffs? Is it days, months?
Well, I think it's very close, but we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to. I could do this in one day. I could just say, here's what we'll do. And I was saying to the people before, to Scott, mostly to Scott and Howard, and some of the other people that work with us on the negotiations. We have a lot of law firms that have paid me a lot of money in the form of legal fees. We're going to probably use those firms to, if we can, I think we can. I'll make a contribution to the country, but they're great firms. They're the best firms, the biggest, and really the most prestigious. And we may be using them to help you guys out, because you're going to need a lot of lawyers. And I'm not sure Pam's going to be happy if I say, can you send over about 200 lawyers that work on trade. She's working on criminal stuff, and I think that's going to be her focus more than anything else. So we'll find out if we can do that. But we have a lot of lawyers that you've been reading about where they paid $100 million a firm on average. Now we have the final 4 or 5 are at $125 million. So I have a lot of legal fees I could give to you people, and we might as well use them. Hopefully I won't need that many legal fees or that much. I may. Who knows? After it ends, after we leave, maybe I'll need it. But if I do, it's not going to be very pleasant. So I think we're going to try to use these very prestigious firms to help us out with the trade, because we have a lot of countries. But we want to make deals that are proper for the United States, not just we can make deals easily. We want to make them proper.
Mr. President, if you aren't able to reach the deals that you want to see at the end of the 90 days, will you put those higher tariffs in place, or will you extend
Well, that's
pause?
what would happen. I mean, if we can't make the deal that we want to make, or we have to make, or that's good for both parties, it's got to be good for both parties.
You wouldn't
And then we go back to where we were.
go back to the numbers that you
Yeah,
announced last week.
I think so.
You wouldn't extend the pause?
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens at that time.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said yesterday you were considering some exceptions for companies. Can you talk about what you're considering? And then also on the reciprocal tariffs, so they'd be substantially lower. Is the same math formula going to be used, or is that tossed out?
I'm not considering now for any country or company, but it's possible that I would. But I'm not. We don't have that situation right now. People understand where we are, what we're going to do. But it could happen. It's called flexibility. You have to have certain flexibility.
What are you planning on using the money that you're gaining from revenue through the tariffs on?
Paying down national debt, reducing taxes, creating good budgets, helping Christie with the border and all of the other things. I built hundreds of miles of wall, as people now understand, 571 miles of border wall in the first administration. But we're going to beef it up, and we're going to add more. And the numbers are incredible. Really, the numbers of what's taken place. We had great numbers, but these numbers are topping my last administration. And Christie and Tom Homan have done an amazing job. But it's an expensive process. This weekend, where they used to have hundreds of thousands of people standing there pouring through the border in Tijuana, Mexico, this weekend they had nobody. You had a man sweeping this massive piece of concrete, which is, the area where they said massive. And I've looked at that during the Biden administration. You couldn't see a piece of that concrete. There were so many people on it. You couldn't, if you had helicopter shots, you couldn't see concrete. Now, this weekend, you had nobody there but a man with a broom sweeping it and cleaning it up. Pretty amazing. It's really an amazing job. But it will be used for that. It'll be used for a lot of things. It'll be used by the Department of Justice for doing a great job. Pam is doing a fantastic job. So it's going to be used for a lot of different things.
Mr. President, on the 10% tariff, is that a basement? Is that the
It's a
floor?
baseline.
Can countries negotiate that to bring that
It depends
down?
on what they're adding. Some countries we have massive deficits with, or they have big surpluses with us, and others it's not that way. So it depends. That's why it's really they're all different. Every country is different. Some have certain advantages that others don't have, and certain things. We have some. China has a surplus of $1 trillion. I mean, the numbers are crazy. And others have basically no surpluses. We have some that are pretty even, but they hurt us in other ways, and we just want to get that taken care of. So everyone is a little bit different.
So are you negotiating with the EU as one bloc or individual nations for the tariffs?
We're looking at it as one block. They've been very tough, but they were very smart. They were ready to announce retaliation, and then they heard about what we did with respect to China and others, but China, and they said, we're going to hold back a little bit. They decided to hold back. I thought they were very smart. Look, the EU is very smart, but they really have taken advantage of the United States. They were formed for the purpose of taking advantage of the United States. And I don't blame them, and I don't blame China. I don't blame anybody. I blame the people that were sitting at that desk in that other beautiful Oval Office for allowing it to happen. Many presidents I blame. They should have never allowed it to happen. And I'm doing something that a lot of them wouldn't want to do. But I'm here, I do those things, and we're going to make this country great again. We were taken advantage of by almost everybody. I sat back in the last administration. I would actually read them. I don't have to read them now. I know them so well. I would read some of these documents that were signed, deals, and I said, who would do a deal like this? Who would do it? You've seen it, Elon.
Yeah.
I'd look at deals where it's so one-sided. Even we have a deal with Japan, and we get along great with Japan, and we had the Prime Minister here. He was fantastic. As you know, Abe was great. Shinzo was great. He was a good friend of mine, unfortunately no longer with us. But we defend them, but they don't have to defend us. I said, that doesn't sound too good. But we have a deal where, a defense deal. We pay hundreds of billions of dollars to defend them. But if for any reason, in other words, we pay all the money. They don't pay anything. But if we're ever attacked, they don't have to do a thing to protect us. I said, oh, that sounds like a wonderful deal. So that's just one out of thousands. And I just wonder who did this. And it's people that either hate our country or didn't care, an expression that you use. I think it's really a lot of them didn't care. It's just hard to believe how bad they are. Now that's a little bit of a defensive deal, but I'm talking about trade deals, the same thing. They're so bad, you would say, how come? And even when I'd renegotiate, like I'd go to a country, they'd give me everything I asked for. I said, why didn't somebody ask for it like originally? They give me everything. I think when they were negotiating, they didn't care, or they didn't ask, or they were shy, or they were very stupid, or they hate our country.
President, can you talk to us about your communications with China? Has President Xi reached out at all since the tariff?
Well, I don't want to say who's reached out. I just say that I think it's going to work out, hopefully well.
Including TikTok?
They're very big. It's hard to get over, if you're me, what they've done to our country. They've destroyed our economic base to a large extent. The good news is we're very vibrant, and we're going to get it back fast. We already have. Look, we're making $2 billion a day now, and during Biden, we were losing $3 billion a day. Biden was a disaster. He was the worst president in the history of our country.